versus Superman.
We're back.
Yes, we are, and this time we are doing a very big movie. We are going to see Batman v Superman.
This movie is getting hammered by the critics. They are straight up hating it. While audiences, they're split. Some want to choose to believe that the critics are right. Others choose to believe that the critics are being manipulated by Disney and Marvel and all that. I don't know where to go. I personally... Okay, here's the thing with the DC movies with us. We are in the camp of people who like Man of Steel, but we're also in the unique camp that, despite the fact that we like Man of Steel, we can accept that there are some problems with it, and we don't care, we still like it anyway.
However, we are not in the camp that we believed that DC was going. We are not really in the camp that we believe that DC could beat Marvel, because Marvel has a huge, for a number of reasons. One, Marvel has a huge head start, and DC is kind of not doing a great job with the idea of developing these characters before they just plow into Justice League.
Then, of course, there's the fact that they are putting all their they're putting everything in, they're putting all their faith on Zack Snyder, who, I like him as a director. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with Zack Snyder as a director, except for the fact that his one original movie sucked. Anyway, the thing is, there's a reason Joss Whedon directed the Avengers instead of Jon Favreau, and I think DC has lost sight of that in an attempt to fast forward to the Justice League into pre-production before they even have a full team roster thrown together.
However, we are very going into this as open-minded as we possibly can, simply because it's a superhero movie. It looks interesting, but ultimately, is it going to be any good? But ultimately, if it's going to be any good, we don't know. All we know, we just have not really been all that excited for the last the last 3 years not exactly being excited for this movie. Incredibly excited for this movie.
So in the end, we're going in with an open mind. Even though the critics are kind of swaying in one way, audiences are swaying in another, and honestly, I think Doomsday is too badass a villain to not get his own movie, but what are you going to do? The movie's already printed and it's already out. So anyway, we will see you guys after the jump. Alright guys, so movie's over. The verdict is, I liked it, but I understand the problems with it.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. But ultimately, I guess, I don't know I really don't know how to feel about it. Honestly, there's a lot of stuff I liked, but there's stuff in there that I didn't like all that much, so.
Let's start with it. I feel like, okay, everyone says this, I feel like there are whole storylines that should have been cut. There are not just parts that should have been cut. I feel like, as much as I like the Lex Luthor as a character, as much as when they announced that he was actually going to be a character in this movie, I said, this is going to make the ending to Man of Steel a lot better, because mythos, I don't want to explain it all here. But honestly, his whole storyline could have been cut. Everything he did in this movie could have been cut. You could have cut the entire movie. And actually, this movie's about a half an hour too long, honestly. They should have ended it they could have ended it a lot earlier, because, as I said before the jump, Doomsday is a badass enough villain that he deserves his own movie, not just be shoehorned into this movie.
I honestly liked the Doomsday stuff, because Doomsday was awesome in this movie, but honestly, there was the fact that they blew it all in that they basically blew their load in the trailer meant that there was that for the majority of the climax, there was no tension. Like, oh, well, this scene could have had a lot of tension I could have had a lot of tension in this particular scene, but you showed me that they're going to be fighting Doomsday in the climax, so I'm just going to sit here and not think Superman or Batman could die in this part.
Okay. Also, I think the Wonder Woman movie should have come before this. They had all these little hints at stuff that's gonna happen in the Wonder Woman movie, but I think the Wonder Woman movie should have come before this, so that we are not just looking at all this stuff. We're not just dropping hints, and we actually see this stuff before we talk about it in this movie.
Because the Wonder Woman movie looks fantastic in this movie. The stuff we're seeing of this, it looks fantastic. The stuff we've seen, the Amazonian woman and picture that just came out today, the stuff we see in the movie, the fact that Gal Gadot is a freaking badass in this movie. Even though we don't get a lot of her, she very much feels a little shoehorned in just to get Wonder Woman in there.
And, as a Justice League setup movie, it sets up the Justice League, but it wasn't well enough thrown together that it actually... Remember when we said we liked this movie at the beginning of this?
Yeah!
It didn't feel like... It just felt a little forced. I mean...
we swear we like this movie, but the thing is, it just feels like they're just jamming the Justice League in because it needs to be jammed in, and I didn't smile, and a smile did come across my face when I saw Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman beating the crap out of Doomsday, but at the same time I was like, this doesn't feel... But at the same time we get to see upcoming stuff for The Flash, and Cyborg, and Aquaman, and I'm like, this doesn't really feel earned, in a way.
And of course, what was I going to say? Okay, whatever. Let's just let's get rid of all the negativity and just go into the good stuff about this movie. Ben Affleck, Batman is dead. Batfleck is dead. Long live Ben Affleck as Batman.
Ben Affleck is the best interpretation of Batman I have ever seen. I swear, he is like now my favorite. He just beat out Christian Bale as my favorite portrayal of the character, period.
And let's face it, this movie, the best parts were the parts where it was essentially a Batman movie.
Because Batman is freaking awesome, and Henry Cavill as Superman, he has never been he is not a bad Superman. He is probably probably one of the best Superman we have ever seen in movies.
And, okay, and of course Gal Gadot, whatever. She is an incredible Wonder Woman. She's the perfect choice for the role. She plays it well. She's incredible. And Jeremy Irons as Alfred was my absolute favorite part of this movie. He played the role so perfectly, with that perfect amount of charm and wit and everything that you would expect from Alfred.
He pretty much... With every single person who's played Alfred, we always have this, like, smart-assy butler. This just, like, smart-assy British butler type. And Jeremy Irons did great. He is, of course, he is just a great Alfred. But it's weird that they actually touched base on the fact that when they first announced that Jeremy Irons was going to be Alfred, and they were going to touch base on the fact that he was, like, a war hero and all this crap, and yet... They didn't talk about that at all. They didn't really do much character development for Alfred at all. So it feels weird why they said that when they cast him. As if they needed to justify casting Jeremy Irons.
As for the directing, I gotta say Zack Snyder, I've said this before, Zack Snyder, he does one thing great, and that's pretty much action scenes. Now, from shot one, pretty much, you get this sense of a bit of his trademark sort of pretentiousness, with with a lot of artsy shots,
slow motion, all that stuff. But
honestly, that doesn't distract really. It's like there's like three different pieces of the places in the movie where he just throws in these little pretentious shots for symbolism and all that. And honestly, the action sequences are very well done, particularly before the Doomsday fight, because, as you can expect, the Doomsday fight, it's a lot of CGI, and honestly, I liked the Doomsday fight. The visuals were great, but I kind of wish it was a lot less CGI.
The fight with Batman that they showed in the last trailer was probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because it was like this just a bare knuckle brawl with Batman and like a half a dozen guys, and like over a dozen guys just beating the crap out of him and using their own guns against him and everything. on that note, is Batman killing? You know what? I don't care right now. Right now I don't care. I mean, yeah, it's out of character, but I don't. It's just a different kind of interpretation of Batman, and it's definitely a Dark Knight Returns version of Batman.
I think my biggest problem is pretty much. I think my biggest problem with I like the idea of it. It's the Dark Knight Returns Batman where he's seen some stuff you can tell, but I wish they had actually. But Chris Stuckman said this in his review. I wish they had actually done it like where basically it was Alfred. There's like this scene, and there are points where you can totally tell that they could have just put that in, where there's just the scene where Alfred's like, Master Bruce, you're just starting to become no better than the people that you're catching, and then they killed Jason, because there's an Easter egg for Jason Todd, and you can and that would be the perfect way to just say Batman is not the same anymore because Jason Todd died years ago, and this is just kind of his way of saying, and this is kind of him showing his bleak outlook on criminals, because he literally says in the movie, criminals are like weeds, you pull one out and one more takes its place.
That kind of brings up something. I can't remember what I was about to say. Basically, the idea is that this is a good movie, but I can see why people are not going to like it. It's definitely an acquired taste. If you liked the Man of Steel, you're going to like this movie. But if you didn't like Man of Steel, you're probably gonna be it's probably not gonna be a great time for you.
Honestly, I think one of the weakest. I think another really weak point is it's not a very good sequel to Man of Steel. I mean, granted, there's parts of it that are basically a natural sequel to Man of Steel, but they don't focus on it enough. This is essentially a Batman movie, and once again, my favorite parts of this movie were when it was a straight Batman movie.
And my biggest complaint is it felt really long. Like, a lot of stuff was drawn out. Like, the entire opening sequence, I don't think we need... The entire opening sequence is just watching Batman's parents die again. We don't need to see that. We know Bruce Wayne's parents died. We've seen it twice already. Burton did it, Nolan did it, now Snyder had to do it. So.
Hell, even Friedberg and Seltzer did it.
Yeah.
So let's have the origin story let's have Batman's origin story kind of be put to bed for a little while soon. Okay, one more thing. I feel like David S. Goyer has trouble writing for Lois Lane, because he writes her as like this badass reporter chick who knows what she's doing. She's kind of spinning war zones, but she doesn't. But then he suddenly forgets what he's doing with her by the end of the movie, because then he has to completely shoehorn her in. And I know it's David S. Goyer because this is the second time he's done this to Lois Lane exactly. So what the hell?
So all in all, this movie was kind of interesting altogether. I kind of can't wait to see it on Blu-ray though, to be honest, because I want to see the director's cut, but Zack Snyder promised us.